So, he's finally done it. Donald Trump has released the JFK files. What do these new documents tell us about that fateful day in Dallas? In 2025, President Donald Trump issued an executive order triggering the public release of any and all still classified government documents relating to its investigation of JFK's assassination.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years.
The materials finally surfaced on March 18, 2025, and while they don't contain much information not previously known to the public, a few of them shed some light on Lee Harvey Oswald's history with the Soviet Union. While it's common knowledge that Oswald spent time in the USSR prior to the murder of President Kennedy, there have long been rumors that he was somehow affiliated with the KGB. One document puts that idea to rest, however. Dated November 20, 1991, the communique reveals that a KGB agent identified as Slava Nikonov went through 5 extensive files to see if Oswald had ever worked for the secretive agency, then discussed his findings with the American college professor E.B. Smith. Nikonov believed that Oswald wasn't easily manipulated, which was a prerequisite characteristic for potential KGB agents at the time. And while he was rigorously observed by Soviet agents, they believe he offered no value to the agency. At one point, for example, they saw him doing target practice and deemed his shooting skills subpar. According to the Warren Commission, Oswald was the sole person responsible for the assassination of President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963. Oswald took up a position in Dallas's Texas School Book Depository building. At around 12:30 p.m., the former U.S. Marine fired 3 shots at the president's passing motorcade. It was the third and final shot that struck Kennedy in the head, ultimately killing him. But the second bullet from Oswald's rifle also did a substantial amount of damage, as it tore through both the president and his riding companion, Texas Governor John Connally.
When I felt an impact, as if someone hit me with a closed fist.
The bullet entered Kennedy through his back and then exited through the neck. It continued to travel, striking Connally near his armpit, then moved through the governor's chest and body, injuring his wrist before stopping in his thigh.
Couldn't be a more horrible experience.
Since 1960, Secret Service agent Clint Hill had been assigned to First Lady Jackie Kennedy's security team. He was present on the Dallas trip in November 1963, and after hearing the first shot, he literally jumped into action, mounting the back of the car in an attempt to protect the president and his wife. Hill was only inches away from John F. Kennedy when he took that fatal shot to the head. He forced a panicked Jackie Kennedy to remain in her seat where she held her dying husband's head in her lap. The agent surveyed the profound injuries to the president and quickly realized that he wasn't likely to survive. According to Hill's memoir, the First Lady screamed out, "Jack, Jack, what have they done to you?" For decades after the assassination, Hill harbored extraordinary guilt over the fact that the president had died on his watch. He subsequently developed a drinking problem, isolated himself from his family, and even contemplated suicide.
I tried to do the best job I could. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough.
President Kennedy had suffered from back issues for most of his adult life, even undergoing multiple surgeries to help alleviate his near-constant pain. When making public appearances, Kennedy would wear a back brace that was a little like a corset. It covered his hips in addition to the majority of his back and was laced extremely tightly. All of that was then wrapped in a constricting fabric bandage. The system kept everything in place and thereby limited the president's pain, but it also seriously restricted his movements. The corset prevented even natural involuntary movements, and that may have been a contributing factor to his death. Kennedy was wearing the apparatus under his clothes when he rode in his limousine through Dallas. After he was shot the first time, his body likely would have recoiled, hunched over, and fallen to the floor of the car, had the president been unencumbered. Instead, his body remained upright in the seat, giving Lee Harvey Oswald his chance to deliver the killing blow. When he heard the first shot ring out, Governor John Connally instantly realized what was happening. He looked across his right shoulder to see if Kennedy was all right, but couldn't see exactly what had happened. He then began to turn to his left, at which point he felt the bullet enter his body. Oswald's second bullet pierced one of the governor's lungs, and he required a 4-hour operation to remove it and repair the damage. In the end, he fully recovered from his injuries, but things could have turned out a lot worse for him had he not moved the way he did. The day after the shooting, attending physician Dr. Tom Shires told UPI, if he had not turned, that bullet would have gone through the middle of his back and probably would have punctured his heart. Obviously, Oswald intended to shoot and kill President Kennedy that day, and he also landed a shot on Governor Connally. But one more individual nearly died at Oswald's hand on November 22nd. James Tague, a 27-year-old Dallas car salesman, arrived at Dealey Plaza just as the presidential motorcade was winding through the area. Late for a lunch appointment, Tague parked his car to get out to see why crowds had gathered. Mere seconds later, he heard a popping sound. At first, he thought it was a firecracker. Then he noticed the distinctive sound of 2 rifle shots. He later told the BBC, and with those last 2 those shots, I felt something sting me in the face. He ran for cover behind an underpass pylon as the motorcade drove away. After speaking with 2 police officers who noticed blood on his face, Teague pieced together what had happened. He'd been struck by a piece of curb that flew into the air, dislodged by one of Oswald's bullets.
It's hard to grasp. Today, I'm still trying to grasp it.
Contrary to popular belief, Kennedy didn't die instantly in his car on Dealey Plaza. Instead, he suffered a long and slow demise, one that proved unspeakably harrowing for his wife. Following the assault, the driver of the presidential vehicle immediately went to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where President Kennedy was rushed into emergency surgery. But Kennedy's prognosis was never good. He arrived at the medical facility in what was described as just near the point of death. The president died on the operating table at Parkland. As Kennedy was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, the rest of the world attempted to come to terms with what had just happened.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead.
Some reactions, though, were stranger than others. For example, the hospital where Kennedy was treated for his mortal wounds received a large volume of prank phone calls. When the Army Signal Corps took control of Parkland's outgoing phone lines, the hospital's switchboard operators were tasked with fielding and logging all received calls. Callers rang in from as far away as Europe, Australia, and South America. Many demanded more information, falsely claiming to be important people. One woman gave her identity only as the Underground and claimed she'd called to offer up her supernatural powers to heal the president. One man told the operator that he planned to blow up her car. Others blamed Kennedy's assassination on his support for the civil rights movement. One boy managed to call in 3 times, reaching 3 different operators. Each time, he claimed to be Kennedy's young son before laughing and hanging up. Secret Service agent Paul Landis was on Jackie Kennedy's security detail at the time of JFK's death. After witnessing the murder and the president's arrival at the hospital, Landis decided to investigate the car itself. That's when he noticed the spent bullet on the seat where Kennedy had been sitting. Landis, technically tampering with evidence, grabbed the bullet and placed it in his pocket. After entering the emergency room, he placed the bullet on the dying president's gurney, theorizing that it ought to remain with the body.
Yeah, I didn't want that to disappear. It was an important piece of evidence.
Landis was never interviewed by the Warren Commission, and he never publicly revealed that he'd taken the bullet until his memoir in 2023. In the book, Landis claimed that he'd simply forgotten to mention it to anyone. Pretty much every investigation into the assassination of President Kennedy has used the same historical document as a starting point, a 26.6-second piece of 8mm film captured by hobbyist photographer Abraham Zapruder. The unflinching footage graphically depicts the president sustaining multiple gunshots to his head and neck. Today, it could feasibly be considered one of history's most recognizable pieces of film footage. On November 22nd, Zapruder had been standing in a spot on Dealey Plaza where he was able to get a clear view of the presidential motorcade. But when the shots were fired, Zapruder became a direct and primary witness to the killing. Zapruder later told a reporter, "I saw the president lean over to Jacqueline, then the second shot came, and then I realized I saw his head open up and I started yelling, 'They killed him, they killed him.' And I continued shooting until they went under the underpass." The moment deeply impacted Zapruder's mental health. He said, "It's left in my mind like a wound that heals up, but yet there's a pain left as to what has happened." His camera was seized by the government and now sits in the National Archives. He was later given a new one, but never touched it or any other camera ever again. The events of November 22, 1963 loom large in the history of the United States. The first presidential murder in more than 60 years unnerved the nation, especially since it had occurred during a time of relative peace and prosperity. Considering the vast impact of the assassination in the country's cultural memory, it might seem surprising that the actual timeline of events is so short. President Kennedy's plane, Air Force One, touched down at Dallas's Love Field Airport at 11:30 a.m. There, the first couple were greeted by the media and well-wishers. By 11:45 a.m., John and Jackie Kennedy, John Connally, Vice President Lyndon Johnson, and their spouses had been loaded into open-topped cars bound for Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas. The motorcade reached its destination at 12 p.m., slowly driving through the streets lined with more than 150,000 locals who wanted to get a glimpse at the president. At 12:30 p.m., Oswald opened fire, hitting Kennedy and Connally. Rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, Kennedy was pronounced dead 1 hour and 3 minutes later. And just 12 minutes after that, Oswald was arrested in a movie theater. At 2:38 p.m., Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as President of the United States on board Air Force One during a flight back to Washington. The entire course of events, from JFK's arrival in Dallas to Johnson's ascension, had occurred in a little over 3 hours.
Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet.
Within hours after the shooting of President Kennedy, police arrested Oswald, and the legal system worked quickly against him. The very next day, on November 23rd, Oswald was arraigned on charges relating to the murders of both the president and a police officer he'd killed during his escape. On November 24th, Oswald was transported from Dallas's police headquarters building to a county jail that could provide better security. And that's when things went wrong. Officials and members of the media crowded into the station's basement as police escorted Oswald through. Just then, local nightclub owner Jack Ruby pushed his way through the onlookers and shot Oswald at point-blank range. Oswald died from his wounds around 2 hours later. What's especially notable about Oswald's death is that it was witnessed live by potentially thousands, if not millions, of people. TV news crews were among the crowd in the police headquarters basement that day, and they were broadcasting the Oswald transfer live as it happened coast to coast. This made Oswald's death the first known televised murder in history, and marked an ignominious end for one of American history's most mysterious criminals.